If you're one of those people that loves to go off-roading and get muddy, but bring the whole family along, there is no shortage of off-road focused SUVs for you to choose from right now. But this one might be a little bit different. This is the 2024 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro, and on the surface, it looks like one of the most off-ready, but still family-focused SUVs that you can buy. In this video, we're going to find out if it's right for your family. So let's begin with an exterior walk around of our TRD Pro Sequoia. The first thing you're going to notice is that Toyota sent me the new signature color for the TRD Pro lineup for 2024. This color is called Tera. It's going to be available also on the Tundra and the Tacoma. I think it's also going to be available on the 4Runner as well. Last year's signature color was called Solar Octane. It was a very bright, very vibrant orange, which you can still get on lower trim versions of the Sequoia, but this Tera is a more muted brownish orange. It looks very cool for an off-road themed vehicle like this. You're either going to love or hate it, so, leave a comment with whether or not you like Tera. Let me know if you prefer it over the Solar Orange. The next thing you're going to notice is that this thing is pretty massive. It's a very large vehicle at 208 inches long with a 122-inch wheelbase. Now, that is a little bit smaller than a Chevy Tahoe, which has a 210.7-inch length, but only a 120.9-inch wheelbase. So this does have about an inch of wheelbase over the Tahoe as an advantage. But as we're about to see when we get on the inside, the Sequoia doesn't really maximize all of that space. So that might be something to consider with your family. This thing does look the business though. A regular Sequoia has 8.6 inches of ground clearance, but this baby has 9.1 inches, so it is a little bit larger, or a little bit taller, I should say, than a regular Sequoia. You are going to get a TRD Pro specific front end, so instead of the Toyota logo, you have Toyota spelled out, which I think looks really cool. You also have these marker lights because this thing is so darn wide that it actually needs those. You also get this cool TRD light bar that is useful for off-roading. And this thing has just such a cool, tough appearance to it. You're also going to get these 18-inch wheels, so you can get all the way up to 22s on a Sequoia if you go for the capstone, but because this is off-road focused, you actually want a smaller wheel, less to curb, and these are actually forged BBS wheels, which is really cool. They have the TRD logo there in the middle. They look super cool, and they're wrapped in these Falcon Wild Peak tires, all-terrain tires, so very off-road capable. You also have this kind of cool camo design here on the fender, just very tough, very rugged and manly looking. I should also mention that we do have a 1.25 inch thick steel skid plate underneath. You can see it right there with the TRD logo. So we do have some underbody protection as well. We also have Fox internal bypass shocks. I'm going to go ahead and try to give you a good look at that with coilover suspension. So this thing can handle some off-road work pretty easily. We also have our TRD Pro logo here. I believe this usually says just iForce Max, hinting at the engine, but on the TRD Pro, it says TRD Pro. We do have some fixed TRD running boards. Those are metal, so they should stand up pretty well to some off-road abuse. And then here at the back, we have Sequoia written out in big letters as we do on most of the models. All of the trim is kind of blacked out on this model, so we do have our black Toyota logo, which is quite nice. And then down here we have kind of our black TRD exhaust tips. It's not just the tips. This does have a little bit of a growl to it that you won't get on other Sequoia models. So the exterior of the Sequoia TRD Pro is pretty cool, and the interior is pretty cool as well. You're going to get these black leather seats that say TRD Pro with this red stitching. And as you can see, there's kind of more of that camo that actually matches the side skirts here within the seat. You've got some perforation, so these seats are heated and ventilated in the front, at least on the TRD Pro model. You can also get these seats in kind of a bright red color. I don't think you can get that with the Tera exterior, but if you were going to get something like white, the red really makes a pop, but it is very bright, so be sure to check that out before you buy. I think that these black seats are very cool. matches the aesthetic that you're going for here on the TRD Pro. You also get your panoramic roof. You get more of this black perforated leather here on the steering wheel, which is also heated on the TRD Pro. Now let's go ahead and shut the door. We've got our red TRD start button. We can go ahead and check out what I think is actually a really nice cabin. This shares a lot in common with the Tundra pickup truck, but that is not a bad thing. There is a lot to like here. Now, as standard on the Sequoia, on the base SR5 model, you're going to be getting a pretty small 8-inch touchscreen, but even on the SR5, you can upgrade to this 14-inch touchscreen, and then every other trim above that is going to have this screen. It's really great. I've said it in other Toyota videos. It has wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. It has really good voice command as well. You can just say, "Hey Toyota," and it'll pick up at pretty much anything you say, and it'll do that really quickly. We also have a standard digital gauge cluster. It's pretty configurable. You have your tachometer here in the middle. You can kind of change what's here on either side. We have our little battery gauge, and we actually have a boost gauge as well because we have a twin turbocharged V6. I mentioned the steering wheel. We've got our little red 12 o'clock marker here because we have the TRD Pro model. We've got a TRD shifter as well. We've also got the Toyota badge matching our grille up there. So a lot of TRD kind of specific accents and stuff like that. But I do love you have plenty of buttons and switches for the climate control. You have tons of button seat controls. You have a very large volume knob. No tuning knob, annoyingly, but the volume knob is at least really large. We've got tons of buttons down here. We've got our camera view. The camera view system on this is really amazing. Let me go ahead and put it in reverse to show you. Very crystal clear cameras, lots of different camera angles for you to use. You have towing cameras as well, just like so much good stuff here. This is kind of your off-road mode, so you can kind of leave this up while you're crawling. You can see where your wheels are at and everything. So really loving that camera system here. We've got our locking rear differential. We've got some of our controls here. We have our off-road crawl control. We have different off-road modes. You have your drive modes here, but then you also have your four-wheel drive controls. So just tons of different TRD Pro stuff as well. You've got your digital camera, which is great, your camera mirror, because you know those third row seats, when you have people or stuff back there, it's going to block your view out of the rear, but this pretty much makes it perfect. So I really do love all of that stuff. We have our wireless charger right here. You could just use this for storage. Our cup holders here. I'm loving this center console as well. You've got a little bit of storage here, a little more storage here. You can go ahead and push this back and you can quickly access what's under there. If you have like a phone in there, it'll just slide under, no problem. It doesn't get stuck. It can kind of live under there, which is nice. And then you can lift this up. Pretty deep storage area. I love how you have your little coin slot here. You've got plenty of USBs, including the wireless charger and another USB up here if you want to run a wired connection for Android Auto. And then this little area, this just removes if you want to have a more open storage area, or maybe you have something small that you want to put in this little square area and you don't want it rolling around. So just really clever on the storage. I think that families are really going to like this front seat. Now, as for the back seat, the TRD Pro model is only available with these captain's chairs here in the second row. You cannot get a bench seat on the TRD Pro. You can on other versions of the Sequoia. So if you need a full 8-seat model, you're not going to be looking at the TRD Pro. Captain's chairs only. Now, these do have the same kind of camo finish that the front seats have. They are kind of adjustable in the fact that you can adjust the backrest, but they do not slide forward or backwards. We have just over 39 inches of legroom, which is not super massive. The Tahoe and other SUVs in this segment have more, and their seats actually slide. And the Toyota Grand Highlander actually has more storage space than this as well. And something I should mention, we do have some climate controls down here. We also have our outlets, but we do not have heated or ventilated seats on the TRD Pro. You can get heated and ventilated seats on like the Capstone and I believe the Platinum trim as well, but not here on the TRD Pro. So your kids are going to be slightly less comfortable than other Sequoia trims, although they are going to look cooler in these camo captain's chairs. You do at least get some sunshades here on the TRD Pro model. And we are going to have our cup holders right here and armrests on both of the seats. Of course, on a full-size SUV like this, you also get a third row. It's pretty decently easy to access. You just pull this one trigger the seat is going to tip and tumble forward. So obviously you cannot do this if you have a car seat installed. If you do, your kids are probably going to have to just crawl around. And luckily you have the captain's chairs, so you can probably access the third row just fine in between the two captain's chairs. I've actually left this seat down just to demonstrate that we do have a little button right here that is going to power lift these seats up, which is quite nice. Now, you do have to kind of climb. You have like kind of these stairs here, making it, I would say, decently easy to get into this third row. But the problem is that these seats sit rather high up, and we're going to find out why that is when we get into the trunk area. So as I'm sitting here, my knees are really high up. I'm going to come over here so that you can kind of see how I'm sitting here. So as you can see, I'm kind of close here. Remember, I can't move this front seat up. I can only adjust the backrest of it so this doesn't slide. We've got up to about, I think it's 33.7 inches of legroom back here, which is only slightly more than what you're going to get on the Toyota Grand Highlander, but the headroom is not great because of how high this seat sits. Now, Toyota did put these little sliders here, so I can slide the seat forward and backwards, but I'm already in the backmost position, so it does slide up even further, but now my legroom is just basically limited. I really don't have a lot. What I can do is I have these little adjusters right here, and if I need a little bit more room, I can push that, and I can actually recline these seats back a little bit, so I don't have to have them be as upright to get a little bit more space. We do also have cup holders back here. We've got USB-C ports back here, and I even have my own sunshades back here. So we do have a little bit of luxury back here, but in terms of space, there are much better options in the full-size segment. And while I am reviewing the TRD Pro model in this video, I should mention that new for 2024, you can now get the TRD off-road trim, which is a lot of what you get here. You get 20-inch wheels instead of 18s, but you do still get the all-terrain tires. You get some other cool stuff as well. You can now get that on the Platinum trim, which is one of the really, really nicer trims. It actually has a little bit more features than what this TRD Pro model has. Not going to be quite as off-road capable, but it'll still be pretty close. And if you go for the limited trim, you can actually get a night shade with a little bit of a darker appearance. So that's what's new, aside from the Tera color, for the 2024 Sequoia compared to last year. And now let's talk about practicality, because this is one area where the Sequoia could potentially be a deal breaker for you if you're looking at the full-size SUV space, because there are much better options in terms of cargo space here. Because Toyota went with a hybrid system here, they could not make this floor flat, as we can clearly see. You've got this lower level, and then you have this big chunk. That is where your battery's sitting, and then you have your seats here on the top of it. Now with the third row up, you're going to be getting anywhere from 11.5 to 22.3 inches of cargo space. You might be wondering why such a big range. Well, Toyota did their absolute best to try and maximize the amount of space in here, given that the load floor wasn't flat. So this is one of the only vehicles in any segment where you can actually slide these rear seats kind of forward and back like this. So if I were to take both of these seats with these little handles and push them up, now I'm going to get about 23 cubic feet of storage back here. As you can see, that did open up quite a bit of space. But as we saw, sitting in the third row, you don't have a lot of leg room back there, so sliding them up this far forward, if you absolutely need the most cargo space and the most passenger space at the same time, it really doesn't work. You're going to pay a sacrifice somewhere. And things don't get too much better when you fold these seats down. So the nice thing about this is you can pop these up manually, these headrests. They will drop down as you push the buttons here. We do have the automatic third row seats here on the TRD Pro model. So just one button click, you don't have to hold it down. They do go down reasonably quickly, and that is going to open up the space tremendously to about 49 cubic feet. But as you can see now, still not even close to being flat. These seats take up so much space. This battery takes up so much space. They don't really fold flush with the floor. And the way that Toyota compensated for that is even weirder. So this floor actually lifts up, and now I have this little cargo shelf here. So what I would do with the seats in this position is I would put it here on this second tier level, and now I can fold these forward. Like again, this is, you kind of have to assemble your trunk. And now it's way off the ground, like there's a ton of space taken up, but at least now I have a flat area to put some boxes or stuff like that. And I have some lower storage. So if you want to go grocery shopping, you know, put some of your bigger boxes, stuff up here, some of your smaller bags and stuff down here. It is kind of nice that it is split like that, but it is really kind of stretching the fabric of like what makes a practical SUV here. You know, you can also lift these seats back up. There are, as you can see, 3 tiers of this. So for example, if I want to put this all the way up to the top tier, excuse me, this is a little bit difficult to do with just one hand. So now I have this kind of storage shelf. I can have stuff lower down. The rear glass on this actually opens up. So if I wanted to just lift up the rear glass, grab something right off of the shelf, that's kind of useful too, I guess. But again, this just feels like kind of a really clunky solution for a problem that really didn't need to exist. If Toyota found a way to make that battery a little bit more flush with the underside of the car. Now, we can expand the seats a little bit more, or the storage space, I should say. You can fold these seats down pretty easily. They do the tip, but we're just going to go ahead and keep them flat like so. I am going to have to go around to the other side and do the same thing. Not too bad, but you can't do it from the third row like you can on some of this car's competitors like the Chevy Tahoe. So now we have like kind of a long opening, but again, not flat at all. Those seats are lower. There's a huge gap. There's all sorts of crevices for all of your stuff to fall into. So not a very flat surface at all. And even with all of this, with all of the seats folded down, you're only getting 86.9, just under 87 cubic feet of space. For comparison, a Chevy Tahoe has 123, as near as makes no difference. That's so much more maximized storage than this has. And even the Toyota Grand Highlander, which is physically so much smaller than this Sequoia, still has 97.5 cubic feet. So the smaller crossover in Toyota's lineup actually has more storage space than the full-size SUV. So that is the biggest problem with this car, the storage space. If that is your biggest concern, you're hauling stuff or people all of the time, and you're not going to use the off-road ability, you're not going to use the towing capacity, you are so much better off with the Toyota Grand Highlander. It's cheaper, it's more fuel efficient, it's more spacious on the inside, it's better for a family, it's just better in every way. So the real advantage of the Sequoia is the towing capacity and the off-road capability, but you are losing a lot in terms of cargo space. All right, so now it's time to get the Sequoia TRD Pro out on the road. And the big story with the new Sequoia when it first came out was no more V8 engine. They have switched to a twin turbo V6, 3.4 liters. And this one is a hybrid only. There is no non-hybrid version of the Sequoia. They call it the iForce Max. The Tundra is available with a regular iForce non-hybrid. And when I say hybrid, it's not exactly what you're traditionally thinking a hybrid would be. It is only a 1.87 kilowatt hour battery, and the electric motor actually lives between the V6 and the 10-speed automatic transmission. So it's wedged in the transmission. So it's really more useful for things like power and towing. What it can do is shut off the engine. So right now I'm just cruising at 19 miles an hour. I'm not really having my foot on the throttle. And right now, the tachometer is sitting at 0, and I just hear this kind of hybrid whistle, this wee-wee-wee-wee-wee-wee-wee-wee. It's very quiet. It's not like a bothersome noise, but it is very quiet in here because this is running on the hybrid battery. But if I were to put any amount of throttle down, now it kicks down. And you do notice it because, as we recall, this TRD Pro has a TRD exhaust. So this does have a little bit of a louder engine note than what you're going to get on some other Sequoia models. Now at this point, I know that some of you in the comment section are going to go, oh, I can't believe Toyota went with a turbocharged engine. It's going to be so unreliable. That V8 was so good and it sounded so good. Calm down just a little bit. I'm here to tell you, it's a Toyota. It's still a Toyota. This is going to be a reliable engine. In fact, this shares a lot in common with the engine that they put in the LS500 Lexus. One of the most reliable cars like that Toyota builds. So let's not go too crazy in terms of reliability. And in terms of power, oh my gosh, this twin turbo V6, especially with the hybrid system, blows that old V8 out of the water. In fact, let's go ahead and put it into its sport mode. It does have a sport mode, and just floor it. Whoa! Okay, I'll give you, it may not sound quite as good as a V8, and they are doing some fake engine sound pumping in here, but it really doesn't sound all that bad. And the result is 437 horsepower. That is way more. I think the old V8 was like 381, and 583 pound-feet of torque. Those are huge numbers. That's more than the 6.2 liter V8 that GM has. That's more than the twin turbo V6 that Ford has. It's more than the twin turbo inline six that Jeep has in the Wagoneer. That is a ton of torque. 48 horsepower and 184 of that is coming from that hybrid system. So although it's not like that useful in the sense of it really doesn't love to shut down the engine and coast that often when you use any amount of throttle, it does really help in terms of power delivery, because one quick downshift, I should mention this 10-speed automatic, fantastic. It's so smooth. This is one of my favorite transmissions in the entire segment. And GM has a really good one. Their 10-speed is also really good. But I don't know, this Toyota one I think is right up there with it. The drivetrain is definitely one of my favorite parts of the car. The whole powertrain is just so cohesive. It's so smooth. I'm not sure I love the TRD exhaust, especially when it goes from quiet to loud to quiet to loud. But just in a normal Sequoia, it's fantastic. The powertrain is one of my favorite elements of the whole car. Now you can get this with rear-wheel drive on some Sequoia models. The TRD Pro is going to be 4x4 only, and you can get 4x4 on pretty much all of the trim levels. It is going to hurt your fuel economy a little bit, but the good news here is that the twin-turbo V6 with the hybrid system is significantly better than the old V8. The V8, and it's almost like impossible to believe that this thing sold up through like 2021, 2022, got 13 mpg in the city, 17 on the highway, and 14 combined. And while I'll say that this Sequoia, even with the hybrid, is not amazing, like I believe that any of the GM full-sizers with the diesel will do much better. Those get almost 30 mpg. This is a lot better than the V8. You're going to get 21 mpg in the city, 24 on the highway, and 22 combined. That's if you get the rear-wheel drive one. The all-wheel drive is going to cut that down to 19 in the city, 22 on the highway, and 20 combined. But I will say, I have not been averaging that, and I have just been driving around in the city where I can actually have the engine shut off quite a bit, and I'm only getting 16.5 mpg. 16.5 mpg, really not that bad. I mean, compared to some of the V8 competitors in this class, it's really not that amazing considering all of the work that they did to make this fuel efficient. But it is a lot better than the last time I had a V8 Sequoia. I think that maybe averaged 12 or 13 mpg when I was driving it around. And it's not just the efficiency that's better. As I mentioned, this hybrid system is really meant for power, and it helps with towing. This TRD Pro model tows over 9,000 pounds. That's more than like any of the GM full sizes. I believe that the Jeep Wagoneer is the only thing that tows more than this. I think that tows around 10,000 pounds. But the SR5, the base version of this car, tows 9,520 pounds. So this thing is an absolute towing beast if that's what you plan to use with your big full-size SUV. And while I say you are going to make some sacrifices in terms of like road comfort for getting this TRD Pro model, I usually love the TRD Pros because they have very soft suspension tuning. This one is a little jouncy for my liking. I think part of that has to do that they had to go back to a solid rear axle setup there in the back when they put the hybrid battery back there. The outgoing old ancient Sequoia actually had independent rear suspension, so it's really weird that they actually went backwards for that because they just couldn't fit it with the whole hybrid system. So especially when you go over like train tracks and stuff like that, you are going to feel that rear end kind of jounce around a little bit. This is definitely not as comfortable as like a Chevy Tahoe with the mag ride. I think that has a better ride than this, but it's really not too terrible. I think that you're going to be better off if you're never going to go off-roading. Even if you just want like kind of that off-road look, I would just go for one of the regular Sequoia trim levels add the TRD off-road package, you're going to get a lot of what you get here. You're not going to get Fox internal bypass shocks like you get on this, but you're going to get pretty close. You're going to get larger 20-inch wheels instead of 18, but I think most people will actually like the way that looks, and it'll still look like a pretty cool SUV. Other than that, the road noise isn't too bad, except for, you know, the loud exhaust. They thankfully sent me one without the roof rack. I heard some of my colleagues complain that the roof rack had a lot of wind noise, especially on the highway. But it's decently comfortable. The steering for a big thing like this is actually not all that bad. And as I mentioned, the passing power, that's really good. So if you can live with some of the compromises of the TRD Pro with the off-road stuff, and you can live with the space compromises, because as we mentioned, the Sequoia is smaller inside than its rivals, this is a pretty cool rig. All right, so that was the 2024 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro. I could definitely see this appealing to maybe a mom or dad out there that wants something really cool. They want an F-150 Raptor or something like that, or maybe a Tacoma TRD Pro, but they need something that can fit all of their kids and their stuff. The truck life just isn't right for them. This has a lot of the same style and functionality that you would get in an off-road vehicle like that, more so than I think some of the competitors. I don't think that an Expedition Timberline or even a Tahoe Z71 is really going to keep up with this off-road. So I could definitely see that type of buyer being interested in this, but you are going to pay a pretty steep price for it. So the base SR5 version of the Sequoia for 2024 starts at just under $61,000. You actually get a lot in that truck, and with the premium package, you get a ton of stuff. So I actually really like the base SR5 version. I'd probably step up to the limited, although now you're spending a little over $67,000, so that is quite a big jump. But if you're willing to do that, the platinum trim I think is the best one out of them all for $73,465. You get heated and ventilated rear seats, you get some really nice leather. You basically get all of the stuff that you really want in this car without spending $77,865 on the Capstone model, which just has like some nicer leather, bigger wheels. I don't think the Capstone is worth a $4,000 premium over the Platinum. I think the Platinum is really the one to go for. And you can now get it with the TRD off-road package if you want to get kind of close to this TRD Pro model. Now the TRD Pro is actually way more than the Platinum. It's $78,710. So it's $81,000 when you include destination on this one that we see here. For reference, if you want a Tahoe Z71 with the 6.2 liter V8, that's about $77,000. So it's in the same ballpark. You probably have to put a few more options on the Tahoe because at least this TRD Pro is very well equipped. So it's not that expensive given the grand scheme of full-size SUVs, but it is a lot of money to be spending $80,000 on an off-road rig like this. As I mentioned, you can save yourself some money, get the Platinum trim with the TRD off-road package. I think it'll look almost as cool. It'll be probably better functionality out on the road, and you're gonna go ahead and get more features. Let me know in the comments which Sequoia trim you would get, and let me know if you would get the TRD Pro model, or you would get something else like a Tahoe Z71 or a GMC Yukon AT4. Let me know which one you would prefer. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. It really helps us create more content like this and bring it to you. I'll see you next time.